Hello everybody, my name is Lucy, which some might say is short for Lucifer, and today we're going to be making some bagels. More specifically, 3 different kinds of bagels. So let's get cracking. Cracking? Cracking? Yeah, cracking. My bagel recipe uses a Biga, which is a pre-ferment, which has a variety of different benefits, including flavor. So we're gonna get started by measuring out 125 grams of water. Also, do make sure you spill water everywhere. It's very important. 125 grams of flour. And a half teaspoon of yeast. You can use instant or active dry yeast. You're gonna give that a really good mix. And once it's completely incorporated, you can go ahead and pop that into the fridge overnight, or you can let it sit at room temperature for a few hours until it has pretty much quadrupled in size, I want to say, or you have something that looks like this. And the best way to get that like really pretty swirly look in your bagel is to make a cinnamon paste. I had roughly 20 grams of cinnamon and 5 grams of cardamom. I like just a little bit of cardamom to really boost up like the cinnamon flavor without it being like overwhelming. A little bit of sugar. I went with light brown sugar here, but you can use regular granulated white sugar or dark brown sugar. And then to that, we're gonna add water to bloom the cinnamon. Make sure that it's nice and punchy, and you want to keep adding water until it looks like a nice paste like this. And then we're gonna get going on our bagel dough. You're gonna start with 405 grams of water, 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast, the Biga that we made yesterday, do your best to get it out of the container that you proofed it in. And then we're gonna add 815 grams of bread flour, 10 grams of diastatic malt powder, 20 grams of salt. And once you have all of your ingredients ready, you're gonna start kneading this. Now I'm using a mixer here because I'm making 3 batches of bagels today, but you can 100% do this by hand. I've done it before. It's a little bit of an arm workout, but you know, working out is good for you. Give it a try. Don't be scared. After it's done mixing, I like to go in and knead it a little bit by hand just so I can get a feel for the dough and how it's doing and make sure that all the gluten has developed correctly. Here, I am going to do a quick window pane test. This is how you make sure that your gluten is really nice and well developed, is if you can stretch your dough until light passes through and you can kind of like see your finger through it as I'm doing here. Round that baby out and leave it to proof for about an hour at room temperature. I find bagels to be really forgiving in terms of like proofing times. You definitely don't want them to like double in size just because like bagels are supposed to be like a little bit on the tougher side, a little bit chewy. You don't want your crumb to be like super fluffy and full of bubbles. So I just left it on my bench until I was done with the other 2 doughs. In my garage is usually around at 69. Then we're gonna get started on the next dough. Already have my ingredients weighted out, so I'm just gonna pop that into the mixer and get it going. And once it's pretty much done mixing and the gluten is developed, I'm gonna add my chocolate chips. I'm using semi-sweet chocolate chips here because those are my favorite, but you can use whatever chocolate you prefer. How many chocolate chips, you may ask? I'm gonna say around a cup might be a healthy amount for you to add. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't measure mine. I just added chocolate until my heart was content. You know, I'm really happy with the outcome. Was it a whole lot of chocolate? Yes, it was. It was a ton of chocolate. It was an absolute pain to shake because the chips are just flying everywhere. But guess what? It was worth it. And we're gonna portion out the ingredients for our final dough. Now, if you're doing a sweet bagel, like a cinnamon bagel or a chocolate chip bagel, the only thing that you need to add to the base recipe is a tablespoon of honey. That's just how I like it. It's not gonna be sweet. I'm still adding 20 grams of salt. It adds a little bit of an oomph, you know what I mean? And here we have the final dough. I am gonna stretch it out a little bit and add the cinnamon paste that we made earlier. I like to do it by hand just so I can control how much the paste is being mixed. And you don't want to knead it too hard. There's no point in trying to incorporate the paste into the dough at this point unless that's what you're looking for. But I want that really nice high contrast marbling. So I'm leaving it kind of chunky. Once you're doing the final shaping, it will come together. Trust me, just spread it out sort of randomly. It doesn't really matter too much. I am a true believer that baking is a science, but it is also an art. It is supposed to be fun. It is supposed to be therapeutic. So do your thing, don't worry about it too much. Do what feels right. If it tears, don't worry. You can see mine tore a little bit. So here we have the first bagel dough. It's been proofing on my bench for about 30 minutes at 69 degrees Fahrenheit. So it has grown slightly, but definitely not doubled, which again is totally fine. And we're just gonna portion it into roughly 12 pieces, 125 grams each, which I think it's like pretty standard for bagels. Then I'm gonna round these out. You can also just go straight into a little bit of a tube shape. And there we go. Cover those and let those bench rest for 10 to 15 minutes while I work on the other dough. And now same dealio, just separate it into roughly 12 pieces, 125 grams each. Now, because of the amount of chocolate chips that I added to this dough, obviously the volume of it is a little bit bigger. So I did end up with one teeny tiny bagel. Don't mind, she's cute. We're gonna get going with the cinnamon dough. As you can see, the paste hasn't super mixed into it, but at this point, while you round them out, you can really start to see the marbling. Now get your baking sheets ready. This was a fun project for me because I only have 3 baking sheets and I had over 3 dozen bagels on my bench at this point. So that was some fun juggling that I had to do there. And now time for shaping. We're gonna just flatten out that ball of dough. Just kind of get it into a tubular shape. Make sure you seal the seams. And as you're rolling it, make sure that it is roughly the same thickness all around. You can taper out the edges slightly and then you're gonna pick one end and you're gonna smush that baby down. I'm gonna try and make it wider rather than longer. And then you're gonna take the opposite end, overlap it with the part that you flattened, and then do your best to pinch the seams closed. I like the circles in my bagels to be kind of like the pockets on women's jeans, aka purely decorational and not at all functional. So I'm going to roll it out until it's roughly 6 to 7 inches, I believe. Now do that a bajillion more times. The shaping on these chocolate chip bagels was a little bit more challenging as the chips were like flying everywhere. But again, an obstacle that is worth overcoming. You don't want to be using any flour during this process because bagel dough is already stiff enough. You don't need the extra flour. Trust me. For the cinnamon swirl bagels, you're going to do the exact same thing that you did with the other ones. But once you're at this stage where you have mushed down one of the sides, make sure it's really nice and stuck to your bench. And then you're going to twist the bagel and that's going to give it that really nice swirly look. Twist it as much as you want and then close it just like we did with all of the other ones. And then once you have them shaped, you can let them sit at room temperature for 30 minutes to an hour. Like I said, bagels are really forgiving. And now for the fun part. Gotcha. What, you thought nobody was doing that anymore? Joke's on you, I'm still doing it. All right, now you're gonna get a large pot of water. This is the biggest one that I have. Bring it up to a nice boil. And now here, since I am going for that New York style bagel, I have some barley malt syrup. I'm doing about a tablespoon down to however much water this is. I don't know. This is just a ton of water. Grab those bagels and pop them in the boiling water. Make sure you are very careful not to burn yourself. I've been making donuts since I was a little tiny child, so I have a lot of practice with this. And I am gonna boil them for 1 minute on each side. That gives you a really nice chew. But once again, this is something you can definitely experiment to. If you like a little bit less chew, you could do 45 seconds, 30 seconds. If you like some real tough bagels, you could even do more than a minute, I guess. I'm pretty sure I've heard of some people doing 3 minutes. So, you know, go crazy, have fun. I like to give my bagels an egg wash with just some egg whites, no egg yolk, and that will give them like a really nice, even, toasty look. And then you're gonna wanna pop them in the oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit or 220 degrees Celsius for roughly 20 minutes. I do 15 and then I flip the tray in the oven just to get really good, even color on all of my bagels. And after those 15 minutes, just make sure you keep an eye on it. Mine take roughly 20 to 22 minutes, but completely up to preference how dark you want them to get. And by the way, don't worry, you don't need to have barley malt syrup. That is just what they use in New York to make their bagels. I believe in Canada it's more common to use maple syrup, but I want to say most places use honey or molasses. It's gonna be delicious either way. It adds a little bit of color to the outside of the bagel and just a teeny tiny bit of flavor. And ta-da! Look at them, they're so pretty. These bagels are absolutely incredible. They're so chewy and yet the inside still feels nice and tender. They are so delicious and I hope you try them. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I will do my best to help you out. I know bagels can seem a little bit daunting, but please don't be intimidated. They are so easy to make. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!